Welcome back to Twisted Pair. I'm your host, Matt Ayers. So, Klein 1005 crimp tool, or one just like it, whether it be from Snap-on or Milwaukee or Southwire, or Greenlee or Channel Lock, you're probably familiar with this tool. If you're like me, you grew up upfitting and this was a tool that you learned to use, or maybe after abandoning all the other tools, this is the tool you'll settled on. But I seldom go anywhere and don't see something like this in the toolbox. And this is a great tool. It can crimp insulated and uninsulated terminals. It has a built-in wire cutter, and if you're careful, you can even use it in a pinch to strip wire. But it is the built-in wire cutter that I have the most issue with. Because that wire cutter leads and is in front of the crimping dies, there's a really strong likelihood that when you're working in the tight confines of a vehicle console or in the trunk or just in a dark unlit space or somewhere where you're really twisted up like underneath the dash, that you can accidentally cut or nick adjacent wires. When that happens, you can have a real problem, because if you're already working in tight confines and having difficulty making one crimp, the last thing you want to have to do is make a repair crimp. The other issue that happens with these, or at least happens to me, is sometimes I get hurt with these, and what happens is I'm holding wires, I'm twisted around, I'm bent over or whatever, and I just get a little bit too close, and next thing I know, I've either pinched or cut my fingers or the web of my hand. Now, it doesn't happen a lot, but I'd say it's happened a couple dozen times over the dozen or more years I've been doing this. So recently, I was out in Arizona helping Damon upfit a sound-off demo vehicle, and he showed me a great tip for modifying these crimping pliers. And what I'm talking about is removing the majority of the wire cutter portion so that you don't have that risk of damaging adjacent wires. Let's go over the workbench and I'll show you kind of some overview of what we're talking about, and you can decide whether this might be for you. What you're going to do is, if these are new, then you're going to want to wipe that oil off and get to where the surface will take a Sharpie. And then you're just going to profile with the Sharpie, draw your cutting line. Be a little generous, because you can always remove metal, but you can never put it back, okay? And one thing I want to point out is notice that the pliers close when the wire cutter portion is fully closed. And that means that it is the wire cutter portion that limits the travel of the crimp dies, so they act as the index for a complete crimp. So it's important that you don't remove all of the wire cutter portion, because if you do, you're going to lose that index point and you will risk over crimping and damaging your terminals. I recommend you go slow, use a hacksaw or some other similar cutting tool. If you're going to use a high-speed cutting tool, just make sure you use oil or some other thing to keep the metal as cool as possible. You don't want to risk damaging the temper of that metal, which will modify its hardness and lead to reduced service life. So cut your profile, then smooth the rest of it out with either a bench grinder, a die grinder, a Dremel, or a file. Again, keep it cool so you don't do a lot of damage. When you're done, if you feel a need to refinish that metal, you can either paint it or I like cold blue, which is a product you'll find at most gun shops that will give that metal kind of a protective acid etched coating. And then you're good to go. So not a lot to it, a quick modification, but I promise you it will make these pliers, these crimp tools, work better for you in a console application. So there you go, a quick modification to this trusty standby crimping tool to help you do your job better and faster in a console. Remember, these probably weren't designed for what it is you do. They work well enough, but I believe this tip will make them work better. We've got more Twisted Pair videos coming, so stay tuned to the channel. Next year is going to be a big year for Twisted Pair, and like and comment below. Let us know what other content you'd like to see, what other topics you like covered, or heck, just tell me what your favorite tools are so that I can check them out. And one lucky commenter is going to get the pair of pliers that were modified in this video. So once I have at least 10 comments below, we're going to pick somebody and we're going to send those pliers out to you. That's it. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Twisted Pair, and I will catch you next time.